The Chinese President Xi Jinping will visit Russia next week to hold talks with President Putin. The announcement of the state visit was made by the Foreign Ministry in Beijing and by the Kremlin, which said the two leaders would discuss strategic cooperation. It added that a number of important bilateral agreements would be signed. I'm joined now by our Asia-Pacific editor, Celia Hatton. Celia, hello to you. So what issues of strategic cooperation will they be discussing? And tell us more about these bilateral agreements and what they might consist of.
Well, Anita, I'm afraid I can't tell you what those agreements will be because we simply don't know. The statement from both the Kremlin and Beijing, they were very short today. However, we do know that in the past, when the two men discussed strategic cooperation, of course, Ukraine is going to be front and center, but also the United States. I mean, both Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, part of the reason they've developed such a close relationship over the past few years is because they both share sort of a joint desire to challenge Western dominance. And so they've seen a lot of value in their partnership over the years because of this. We should also say that Xi Jinping is coming off of really a bit of a diplomatic coup because China was able to help broker new ties between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And so Xi Jinping is becoming a bit of an international statesman. And I'm sure that that new relationship between Saudi Arabia and Iran will be of great interest to both Russia and China.
So you talk about their joint efforts in challenging the West, but might the Chinese approach on Ukraine be slightly more nuanced? Obviously, appeals have been made to China to take a different approach to Ukraine. So do you think that President Xi is likely to try to bring any influence on President Putin with regards to Russia's strategy in Ukraine?
Well, China has said that officially it's neutral. It's got a neutral stance. And in fact, it's released what some are calling a peace plan, but is really just China's proposal for how there could be a negotiated settlement to end the war in Ukraine. But it's very clear that throughout the time that Russia has been in Ukraine, that China really has not denounced the invasion. Its peace plan has called for unilateral sanctions to be lifted. It's also calling for territorial integrity to be respected. What that means exactly is a bit up for debate. And so it's unclear really what China is really would be looking for. However, we do know that, of course, the United States has been voicing concerns that China might ultimately provide weapons to Russia. So far, the Pentagon says that there's no evidence that that's been the case, but that really is the question. You know, China and Russia, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin have said they have a no-limits partnership, but at the moment, weapon supply seems to be the limit. But if Russia really appears to be struggling in Ukraine, what would China do then? That really is the question. Would they ever go so far as to provide weapons in order to shore up Russia's side in the war?
Yeah, but the China 12-point plan for peace in Ukraine, do you think that is likely to be discussed?
I'm sure they'll discuss it. I mean, it was interesting when that was first released. Moscow's response to it was a relatively lukewarm, actually. It didn't fully embrace the plan. And Ukraine also didn't completely disregard it. They said there were some points that they found interesting, but again, the idea of territorial integrity really is up for debate. Where would that line be? Would Russia need to withdraw a little bit? Is Beijing actually really pushing Ukraine to accept where Russia has invaded up to this point? So that plan has really been met with a lot of skepticism, frankly, from everybody. I don't really know anybody who's endorsing China's 12-point plan to a negotiated settlement, except for Beijing at the moment.
Okay, Celia, thank you very much. Celia Hatton, our Asia-Pacific editor.